Hey, what's going on everybody? It's ETAPRIME back here again. Today I'm super excited because I've got my hands on the special edition Evangelion 1X Player 2, and this thing is absolutely beautiful. Like myself, there's a lot of people out there that are huge fans of this series. Neon Genesis, Evangelion, EVA, however you want to pronounce it. This was a very influential anime and personally one of my favorites. Now, 1X Player isn't a stranger to doing collabs. They actually did a 1X Player Mini Gundam edition. Really awesome, but it had an Intel chip and I think it kind of launched at the wrong time. Still, beautiful handheld. But when it comes to this new Evangelion edition, this thing is out of this world. Really love the design, and if you're not familiar with the 1X Player 2, this is the big one with detachable controllers. So down here, we've got the main unit and the controllers. And taking a look up top, they've included a 100-watt charger. And as a lot of you already know, we take a look at a lot of different handhelds on the channel, but this is by far the best unboxing experience that I've ever had with any kind of these devices. Like I mentioned, I'm a huge fan of the EVA series. I personally enjoyed some of the movies also. A lot of you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. And it just happens that purple is also my favorite color, so this really does fit right in. And here we have the left detachable controller. Love those green accents. And this is really modeled after the EVA Unit 01. So we've got that purple and green color scheme, and there is a little bit of orange here. I think they did an absolutely amazing job with this special edition 1X Player 2. So we've got both of the controllers, we've got the main unit, and they've also included a 100-watt fast charger with the 1X Player 2. And this is also using that same color scheme. Even the USB Type-C charging cable here has that green and purple. So yeah, really cool setup here. And real quick, here's a look at the brick. And since the 1X Player 2 does support 100-watt fast charging, this is a 100-watt charger. I also received the matching accessories, and first up, we've got the controller adapter here. What this is going to do is actually transform our detachable controllers into a wireless controller. And unfortunately, they don't work over Bluetooth, but this does include a 2.4 gigahertz dongle. There's a little door on the back of this unit. We can just pull it right out, USB adapter, but these slide right down in. The midsection does have a rechargeable battery to power those controllers up, and the final accessory here is the detachable keyboard. We've got an 8.4-inch display on the 1X Player 2, plus a kickstand around back, so adding a detachable keyboard kind of does make sense. I mean, we've got a pretty big 2.5-inch IPS display here, and once it's set up, it looks a little something like this. So we could actually use this as kind of a laptop if we wanted to. And since we've got the detachable controller, and once we turn it on, it all lights up, and there's a little transparent window there with another purple LED behind it. It really does set it off. I wasn't a big fan of this controller in the white or the black, but set up in purple with those green accents, I think it looks really cool. And adding the controllers to the main unit is really simple. They kind of slot right down in here. There are some covers for the sides. You can slide them in if you wanted to. I just took them out. But once this is all set up, it's definitely a beefy handheld. 8.4-inch display. And this is the version with the new Ryzen 7 7840U, so we do have Zen 4 cores here and RDNA3 graphics. Now, some people might not be into the color scheme we got going on here, but in my opinion, it is one of the best looking handhelds on the market right now, but I am a bit biased. Purple is my favorite color, and again, I'm a huge fan of Evangelion, but you know, the way I look at it is all of the handhelds we've really been taking a look at are either black, white, or light blue. We've seen a few light blue ones. But you know, we could have the best looking handheld on the market, and if it doesn't perform well, then it's just not a great handheld. So we're going to get into some testing in just a second, but I wanted to give you a look at everything we have included here. So obviously up top here, we have our shoulder buttons, our trigger buttons, there's a power button, volume rocker, our turbo button or our 1X console button, 3.5mm audio jack, a USB 4 port, full-size USB 3.2, and our micro SD card slot. And taking a look at the bottom, we've got dual stereo speakers, and these are tuned by Harman Kardon, another USB 4 port, and we've got those pogo pads to connect that detachable keyboard. And by the way, USB 4 on this unit is 40 gig protocol, so we can connect an eGPU if we need to. When it comes to the specs of the limited edition Evangelion 1X Player 2, they have upgraded that APU. We now have the AMD Ryzen 7 7840U instead of the 6800U. This has 8 Zen 4 cores, 16 threads, a base clock of 3.3 GHz, and a boost up to 5.1. Since we're working with a Phoenix APU, we do have the Radeon 780M iGPU. It's based on RDNA3, 12 CUs, and it'll clock up to 2700 MHz. This unit has 32 gigabytes of LPDDR5X running at 7500 megatransfers per second, an 8.4-inch 2.5K IPS display. Obviously, 2.5K is a bit overkill for a handheld, but when playing 1440p video back, it looks absolutely amazing. We've got a 1TB 2280 M.2 NVMe SSD, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.2, a 65.5 watt-hour battery with 100-watt fast charging capabilities, and with that included 100-watt charger, we can go from 0% on the battery up to 50% in 40 minutes. I mean, it really is a fast charge, and we've got a really big battery when you compare it to others on the market right now. And when it comes to the operating system, out of the box, this is running Windows 11, but nothing's really stopping us from installing SteamOS or another variant of Linux on this handheld. So obviously, we've got a pretty beefy handheld here. It's coming in at 848 grams, which is significantly heavier than the ROG Ally or most other handhelds on the market, but we do have a much larger screen and battery here. It's not for the faint of heart. It is kind of a hoss, as you can see here, but it's pretty comfortable the way it's set up as long as you've got larger hands. For the longest time, One X has kind of offered a tuning suite for our handhelds, and if we press this button right up here, it's going to open it up on screen. We can do this at any time. It'll go over a game. And from the top, we can adjust the TDP, 5 watts up to 30, and of course, if you wanted to go a bit higher, you could use a third-party app. Got a couple different fan profiles that we can program. We can select them at any time. We can disable the turbo on the CPU, and this already runs at 3.3 for a base clock, so it's pretty good for a lot of different games already. And they've recently added a performance overlay. This uses Rivatuner and hardware info, but with this, there's also an auto TDP section built in. We can set it up to target 30 FPS, 35, 40, 45, 50, and 60, and it's going to try its hardest to kind of adjust that TDP accordingly so we can get up to that FPS while we're playing a game. Personally, I leave it unlimited. That way I can do it all myself and, try to get the best performance that I can out of this device. But I could definitely see a lot of people using this, and you got to keep in mind it is experimental right now, and they've been working on it quite a bit. We can also adjust the vibration intensity, brightness, and volume from here. And if we long press this button up top, it's going to bring us into the new One X console. And basically what we have here is a new game launcher. This will automatically scan your default directories. You can also set it up to manually scan directories. It'll download metadata and artwork. Looks like right now I do have this set to Chinese. I need to change the language from the settings. We can also set up per game power profiles from here. So if one game only required, let's say 10 watts of power, you can set it up so it'll automatically adjust it when we start that game up. But a lot of updates have been coming out for the One X console, and it's getting better every day. The next thing I wanted to take a look at were some benchmarks I ran here, and keep in mind that all of these were run at 30 watts. Since we've got that larger 65 watt-hour battery, I don't mind running this at 30 watts at all, especially with AAA games and benchmarks. And the first one we have here is Geekbench 6, single core, 2,294, multi, 8,203. Next up, we've got 3D Mark Night Raid, 29,805. Firestrike came in with a 7,783. And finally, Time Spy with a 3,312. Really great score here. Usually with these 7840Us and slower RAM, we're right there at around 3,000 or 31. So that 7500 megahertz RAM is definitely helping out with that iGPU performance. But these are synthetic benchmarks, and now it's time to get into some real world gaming. And the first one we have here is Mortal Kombat 11, 1200p medium settings, and with most fighting games that you're going to run across, you can definitely do 1200p medium to high settings. It really depends on what game it is. For instance, Injustice 2, 1200p, high, 60 FPS. With this, I did have to drop it down. And right now, we do have the TDP set at 30 watts, and throughout the video, you'll see that. Spiderman Remastered, and this is one of those games you just have to run at 800p low on these setups if you want to get 60 FPS, and even then, you'll see it dip under 60 every once in a while. Something like this can be run at 1200p, 45 FPS, and we could lock it there if we want to from One X console, but I wanted to see if we could do 60 with it, and it's not bad. God of War is another one I always like to test. We're at 800p low, and we got an average of 66 FPS. One thing I always mention here with these handhelds is I usually run all of these games with VSync off. I want to see, how far we can go over 60 or if we can even hit 60 with it. But in all actuality, if I was playing this game for fun, I would turn VSync on and just lock it right down at 60. Next up, we've got Street Fighter 6 1200p medium, and with this I figured we could test the game and the D-pad. So with this D-pad here, I do wish it was raised up just a bit more. Now the feel of it and the roll actually works great, but it feels like, I need a little bit more because I am hitting the body. I've missed more than I usually do on a much better D-pad, and I could get used to this, but it would be nice if this was just raised up a tad more. Moving over to Cyberpunk 2077, 1200p low, and on these new RDNA3 APUs, this game performs really great. So as you can see, we're actually over 60. In fact, we got an average of 72 FPS with this at 30 watts. And if we had VSync on, the way it's set up right now, 26 watts would get us to 60, but if you don't mind dropping this down to 800p, you can actually run this at 16 watts, 60 FPS. And the final one we have is The Last of Us Part 1, 800p, low. You can see this is working really hard. It's trying to keep us over 60 FPS, but we do get some dips going under. Indoors, it's totally fine. We can actually get up into the 80s, but when those long draw distances hit, you will see it drop down to around 57. So my first impressions of the special edition Evangelion ONEXPLAYER 2, I love the design. Obviously, I love the color scheme here. I think it looks really good. And like I mentioned, I do think it's the best looking handheld on the market right now. And it really comes down to just being a lot different from anything else. I'm a big fan of these larger screen handhelds, and this 8.4 inch 2.5K display does look really good. Wish it had a bit more brightness to it, but overall, it does its job. Obviously, we're not going to be gaming much at 2.5K. Now, with older games, Skyrim, we can actually go up to 1440p with those on the 7840U low settings, and they perform great. But with something like this, since we're working on battery powered, I keep it at 1200p, and even at 1200p, the screen is nice and sharp. Really do wish this D-pad was raised up just a bit more, or they used the new One X Fly D-pad. Recently took a look at that one, and they've definitely upgraded that D-pad. Feels much better than any other ONEXPLAYER right now. And in terms of performance, at 30 watts, it's right on par with the other 7840U handhelds on the market, and we've actually got quite a few. I've got a couple more in-house right now that I'll be testing in the next few days, so definitely stay tuned to the channel. And shortly after those videos, we will do a big comparison between the other 7840U handhelds on the market. But that's going to wrap it up for my first look at the Evangelion ONEXPLAYER 2. If you're interested in learning a little more, I will leave some links in the description, and if there's anything else you want to see running on this, just let me know in the comments below. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. Like always, thanks for watching.